one of the things that we need to say back to AMP is, look, we don't even know what you're asking of us. And so we can't possibly agree, we can't possibly negotiate a contract. Am I looking at 5 solar fields that would take 10 employees to manage? Am I looking at 3 solar fields that would take 3 employees to manage? How can we enter into a contract talking about somebody reimbursing us for the entire costs of management when we don't even have any information on that? So, and that's sort of going down one rabbit hole. So, but again, here we are. Where are they going? How environmentally sensitive are the areas? You know, how big are they? You know, I mean, all without them putting plans to the planning board so that the permitting process begins. I don't know how the select board entertains maintenance and operations agreement. I mean, even the idea of hiring an actuary to say, look, here, there's this many solar fields, they're this size. We need you to give us a breakdown of how many employees would be needed, the cost of those employees, what equipment would be needed, the cost of that equipment, so that we in fact can put together a spreadsheet on the cost of this to the town to pass it back to the developer. We can't even do that without some solid plans. So, you know, I'm not convinced that the select board moving forward first is possible without AMP going to the planning board.
Yeah. Well, it's like you keep saying, what would we be moving forward with?
Right.
As you're pointing out really clearly, there's a lot that we don't know. So how do we agree?
We can't. We're just not in a position to enter any kind of agreement with them.
But this, all right. So there you go.
So I'm thinking, I think we're maybe have a consensus here. We need a lot more information. We have at least a couple of questions go forward with a letter to DOR. Becky, I know you had written them down and so did I.
Yes.
And then kind of start there and from what Donna suggested, start there, gather more information, and then when we have something more concrete to discuss, bring it back and discuss it again to see if it, you know, as we get information, maybe it bubbles up again and we have another conversation like this to see if we want to go forward with the next step. But I agree, we need more information, something concrete.
You know, but how do you negotiate nothing?
Right.
Good point, April. Good point.
So I want to get back to Donna's point that we don't know what we would be operating and maintaining.
Right.
And I don't think we can execute any kind of agreement until we know what we're operating and maintaining. And also, no one that I know, anyway, that's stepped forward, you know, has the expertise and the technical background in operating and maintaining what are, in essence, 5 mini power plants. And so, you know, I don't think, and I think Donna spoke to this at that meeting, that other meeting where we talked about the MOU, you know, that we would need, beyond an actuary, we would need an expert to tell us what exactly is involved in operating and maintaining these small power plants, and what sort of liability does the town incur in taking on such a responsibility? So pretty complex. I think we would need a lot of assistance, but I don't think we're there. We're not there because we don't know what we'd be operating and maintaining. And until that time, I think it's a discussion that we can sit here and talk about it, but we don't really have a sense of what it is.
I mean, there's so many questions like that, but spending the time and energy to research something like that now, you know, and try and figure it out when we're so far away from an agreement, you know, seems like sort of a silly waste of money until we're down to caring about what that answer is.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's the chicken and the egg.
Yep, still.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So what have we got?
I think you tell Ant that you know, it's an intriguing idea, but without a lot more specifics, the town can't move forward.
Yep.
And I guess I would really question about whether or not we could move forward until we have permits before us.
Yeah.
Before we know what the installations are, because how can you agree to operate and maintain something that you, again, don't know what it is?
If there was a concrete application, concrete plans that were going through, excuse me, the permitting process, then you may be able to start, at least, as Rita said, getting a consultant in to talk about how many employees and what kind of equipment and what the cost is of operating
Right.
five small energy plants, and how many employees would that take, and so that we could begin to work out the cost of it. It's not like you have to wait till the permits are final and everything's signed, sealed, and delivered to basically start on the agreement. But if in fact it's moving along, the permits are moving along, you could at least start, then it might be worth the effort to start bringing some of these people in, not for final figures, because Rita's absolutely right. Until
Mhm.
the permits are in hand, you're not going to know the final figures. You're not going to be able to sign anything. But you could at least be developing concepts, and that's the fluidity piece of it,
Right.
you know, so that, but until those plans are somewhere, we can't even begin to talk about that.
Well, he's just wondering if, if the select board does want to entertain more conversations. He has been trying to explore whether there's any potential for creative solutions. At this point, I'm not sure that he's found anything concrete. But I guess the one thing that the select board has not yet done is review a real proposal straight from AMP, not that MOU proposal, but what might make up an agreement. And as to the points that Donna made, she felt that it would be important for the select board to make a list of what issues they might be off the table for the town in any kind of an agreement with AMP, and if there are some things that are workable. And I think it's important to have that conversation for the select board to have that conversation with AMP and just clarify once and for all, is there any viability to their proposal or not? And just resolve it in a concrete, simplified manner where the select board lists out its reasons for opposition to it, or if there are some reasons that are, that the select board would want to entertain, what those would be, and just give AMP something concrete to look at. They proposed giving a copy of a similar contract that they would give to any contractor, going back to the operations and maintenance concept. And I think it would be worth a review of the select board to determine, go through it, cross out things, add things, and see what might be left.
Thank you. April and Rita, do you have any thoughts or or suggestions on? Any
Yeah, I
thoughts or
guess,
suggestions?
you know, I go back to the discussion that we had with Donna, and I don't think my position has changed, and that is that it seems premature to be talking, negotiating, outlining any kind of operations, the maintenance agreement, when we don't know what we'd be operating or maintaining. And no permits have been applied for, issued, whatever. So, you know, I also think that it's complex enough that us alone, that this select board without, you know, if we had a lot of technical expertise, if we were negotiating, if we were going to negotiate, you know, we need a lot of expertise. So, you know, I for one am not ready to do this. That's kind of where I think I articulated that at the previous meeting, and just restating it here.
Well, I guess I maybe have a different perspective in some ways. I think that the select board really needs to do due diligence in terms of really looking at what this arrangement could or could not do, even under the context of we don't have a specific, you know, is it going to be 1 solar array, 5 solar arrays? Clearly, if there are no solar arrays, there's no agreement. I mean, then it would be off the table. But I think it is an opportunity to be creative, you know, in how it's looked at, in terms of, you know, really being clear if this were to happen. And I think looking at a sample would be a good starting place. But if this were to happen, you know, what kind of, you know, really understanding the change in the infrastructure. You know, we don't have enough office space for who we have. How would this physically be part of the community? What kind, you know, just exactly what does this look like? And I think it's really important that this be explored, and in no way should this be a money loser for the town. You know, I think that's very important, whether or not it happens. But I think that the select board really needs to do the due diligence and really exploring this out as far as it will go. You know, using the consultants. I agree with you, Rita. You know, what do they call them? Actuaries. No idea what they do, but I think that would be some, you know, somebody to look at the money aspect. You know, is it viable? Is it a possibility? And if not, then no. But I think we really, really, really need to look at it thoroughly before we walk away from it.
And I think I do fall with the due diligence part, and making sure that we think it through. I do think we can think it through without an application, because there are some evidence of other solar arrays in other places that have these agreements or contracts that we can look at as an information spot. So it's not completely theoretical in that way. But I think we have to just have the conversation, and this may be a long conversation. It's not going to be, you know, something that's going to happen quickly either. And it doesn't have to start out as a negotiation to start with. It's just gathering information. What might one look like? And then how do we think outside the box if something doesn't feel right for Shutesbury? And how do we, like April, you said, how it can't really be a losing situation if we are going to go forward with it for Shutesbury. But I think we can have those creative conversations now, and as applications become filed and as the projects, if they go through the permitting process and such, then they can be honed in more into a negotiation at that point. But I think it's important for us to get something to look at, just something to ponder, you know. So that's why I feel on it.
I also think that Shutesbury, you know, I don't see us as a little itty bitty town of, you know, that's vulnerable to this huge, horrible corporation. You know, I think that we really can negotiate or look at this from a position of power. really. I mean, it's our say ultimately on this part, you know, the permitting. I think we have to have faith in the solar bylaws that we have passed, you know, that we, you know, that our town has protections, I believe, and a really good group of people looking at it. And I think that this is something that we can negotiate from a position of, you know, not as the little guys, but as, you know, the equal people at the table.
I don't know how we're equal, you know, with the deep bench that AMP has in terms of legal and other expertise. You know, I think the other thing, the other question that, you know, AMP has to answer, or maybe DOER, Department of Energy, State Department of Energy Resources, is my understanding from the meeting that we had back with them in March, was that AMP does not get its standing until it has an executed, its standing in category 1 until it has an executed operations and maintenance agreement. And they want that now. They want that before, you know, as soon as possible, because it gives them standing and puts them in the front of the line. So, you know, my educated guess is they are looking for an executed operations and maintenance agreement before they even submit the permits, before they apply for the permits. And without that, it's kind of, you know, it just doesn't do them any good to, you know, have us sort of saying we're interested, and then that's not what they want. They want an executed
Absolutely.
operations and maintenance.
I think you're probably
But I
right.
think
And
that's,
I don't think we have the technical expertise, and the, you know, that it would be some significant legal expenditures, but really in understanding what's involved here.
Right.
So
you know, I think even in the negotiation is that, you know, they pay for our consultants. I mean, but we have room to move, I think, in this. And I'm also not saying that this is something we have to rush. And I think I agree with you, Rita, that they would really like to have this in their back pocket before they move forward, but maybe not. But I think that would be something that they would want.
so, but I do think, like in our last meeting, we admitted we didn't have enough information to go forward. And
Right.
at this point, I think we don't have enough information to say no. So, because we don't know, we don't have enough information. You can't just outright say this isn't something we want to even think about, because we don't know that we don't want to do that because we don't have enough information. So that's also something I was thinking about this week is we have to do our due diligence, whether we personally agree with this particular thing, or if we don't, we have to put our select board hat on and do what might be best for the town and what benefits it might have for the town. So that's where I'm falling on this anyway.
So, you know, I guess, you know, I have serious reservations about this being good for the town. And so when I think about, you know, you know, taking on this kind of responsibility and potential liability, I'm not sure that a town of 1,700 people with a mostly volunteer town government is really suited to overseeing 5 small industrial power plants, which is essentially what they are. So that's number one. You know, if it's about money, we do not have to have the public-private partnership. I mean, the 5 solar installations, or however many there end up being, would still pay a payment in lieu of taxes if they got permitted. I mean, then, that's part of the deal. The public-private partnership piece of this for AMP is about the town operating and maintaining. I mean, and they get financial benefits from, from engaging with us for contracting. But I don't see how that really, we have to cover our costs, and some of the numbers that were thrown out there was a kind of overhead number. I'm not sure, paying for that overhead and paying the expenses for the operations and maintenance is worth the risk. Yeah, the pilot payments, if this were to get permitted and move forward, yes, the solar installations don't except initially, make a lot of demands upon our highway department, and our roads. They don't send kids to school. They don't need, we hope, emergency services. So yes, those pilot payments are very attractive in the sense that, they are income for the community without a tremendous amount of expense, additional expense. But the payments for the, for the overhead and for the actual operation and maintenance, that's just a sort of a carrot that they're dangling out there. And I'm not sure that it's, again, worth the risk.